Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this panel discussion on upcycling the sari. This is a part of a very special virtual event called Yards by Femina. I'm Krishna Mukhi, the fashion editor of Femina magazine, and joining us today are Meghna Nayak of Lata Sari and Stefano Funari of Was A Sari. Saris are probably the most timeless and versatile garment ever. For an Indian, cutting up their mum's sari to get something stitched that they could wear on an everyday basis is not something out of the ordinary. But these labels have actually taken it several notches higher with their global and effortless aesthetic. So let me introduce them to you. Stefano, designer and founder of Was A Sari, and Meghna Nayak, designer and founder of Lata Sari. Stefano, tell me, how did this begin? What inspired you to start Was A Sari?
So, hi Krishna, hi everybody. So first of all, I am the founder of Was A Sari, but I'm not a designer. I am in fashion by chance, because what inspired me to start the project is basically this idea of creating a sustainable business, able to empower communities coming from disadvantaged background. So that's
Right.
the origin of the project. I'm Italian, but before moving to India 10 years ago, I was in a corporate career in Switzerland, and I decided to go for a professional and life change. So I moved to India, and with the idea of becoming a social entrepreneur. And
Right.
And at the beginning of this journey, I started working with local NGOs that work primarily with children. And in that experience, I immediately realized that if you want to really scale your impact when you work with children, you need to find a way to sustain the women behind them. So that is really how the search for a project, for a business idea started. And then I have to say, quite randomly, one day I was working on a project in the central belt of Mumbai. It was a street children program, and I ended up by pure coincidence in a go down full of saris. And I thought, wow, what is this? I started pulling saris from different bundles, and and that is how there Was A Sari branded adventure started. It was probably 2013, 2014. We went on as an experiment for a couple of years, and then from 2016 we established a company, and we started really trying our best to scale the impact and scale the business.
Nice. So tell us about what you do and your collaboration with Gucci.
So Was A Sari is a contemporary sustainable fashion brand. We make accessories and garments using pre-loved Indian saris, and we involve for the production female artisans coming from disadvantaged background. The project was conceived in Milan, but then absolutely born and brought up in Mumbai. I can also say in the slums of Mumbai, where we have where our production is actually taking place. And whatever we do is about sustainability, because we work with sari and with an increasing number of other either upcycled or recycled material. We have really a strong focus on social inclusion. So we like to see really, we really like the idea of working with women that come really, mostly are unskilled, come from disadvantaged background, and we like to turn them into the actual designer of their own future. And last but not least, we are a company, and so we strongly believe in the financial sustainability of what we do. So we have a strong social agenda, but we are a business. And so in this journey, about 3 years ago, it was 2018. I remember I was in Mumbai. I received a call, and you answer the phone call, and on the other side, someone is saying something. Then you say, yeah, Gucci, and sorry, who is speaking? Gucci. And I said, what is this? And basically was the head of CSR of Gucci, an Italian person that was in Mumbai for a business trip, and she got to know about what we do, and she invited me for dinner, and we discussed at length. And I still remember that at the end of the dinner, she asked me, "Have you been briefed about what we are looking for?" I said, "No." I mean, how is that? Because what you explained to me is exactly what we want to do. So we want to partner with a social enterprise that is absolutely focused on women empowerment and circularity sustainability.
Right.
So I said, no, I've not been briefed, but that's exactly what we stand for. So we started our discussion at the beginning, and then we enter into a partnership that is still going on, and is still really growing and becoming better and better. That, in my view, is very interesting, because it's not at all the traditional way of thinking and approaching CSR. It's not about giving money and then monitoring the utilization of the money. It's very much about looking at how we can create synergies together in the space of sustainability. And just to let you understand, for example, one of the most innovative things that we do together is linked to a volunteering project that the Gucci brand has, which is called Gucci Change Makers. It's a volunteering program for all the Gucci employees around the world. They can, basically, employees can dedicate a certain number of days throughout the year and work on a social cause that is close to their heart. And so we use a lot Gucci Change Makers. And as we speak, we are running a beautiful collaboration with the creative team of Gucci, which is mostly based in Rome. But we have worked with accountants, photographers, graphic designer. So basically, it's an idea where we acknowledge the fact that a company like Gucci has amazing talents, and everybody is really looking for purpose. So instead of focusing all the time only on, okay, the money and the funding, and there is something even more important, more valuable that companies can give. And this is very much at the core of our collaboration with Gucci. They share leftover material with us. For instance, Gucci in India, and especially in Mumbai, as an important part of the embroidery production. So embroidery for Gucci is mostly done in India, Mumbai. So with them, we have partnered in order to create a special training program for female artisans. And we have developed a comprehensive training program that starts from the history of embroidery and goes to all the techniques. And it's a freeware course that we have developed and that we give to anybody who is willing basically to use, not exclusively for a commercial purpose. And this is another example of a collaboration, because Gucci gave all the leftover material from their production. They created a connection with the best embroidery houses in Mumbai. They supported the training activities. And so this is the kind of collaboration we have with them.
Interesting. So I'll direct the question now to Meghna. Meghna, tell us about Lata Sita. What inspired you to do this?
So I too, like Stefano, didn't have a background in fashion. I studied journalism with a view to be an environmental journalist. And, issues of sustainability, sweatshop culture, alternative lifestyles, these had occupied me ever since I was a teenager. And at this point, I never really imagined I would start my own brand, but I always customized my clothes since I was a teenager, adding pockets, changing shapes. So I already had an interest in design and textile and gave me great pleasure, but I always thought fashion was at best a really frivolous industry, and I honestly wish no part in it. And some point, I mean, I had studied journalism with the intention of creating change through awareness. But my interest in design persisted. And I also soon realized that writing about what people should do was less satisfying than actually doing it myself. And that's when I started thinking about textiles and sustainability more seriously. And I considered various sustainable options such as organic cotton, handloom. I was about 25 at the time, quite broke. And I was wondering what to make my samples out of. And at this point, my mom opened up her wardrobe. And I, who had a relatively anglicized upbringing, always looking outside, always looking to the West for one's inspiration, one style of dressing, etc. I found I had not much interest in or knowledge of textile at that point. But then I found these beautiful pieces belonging to my grandmom, who I'd never met, but whose saris had been carefully preserved by my mother for decades. It felt almost like an instant, intimate connection with her. It was like a hotline to history. And like it, there were so many others that my mom had inherited, gifted, bought, a lifetime of saris, just preserved, tucked away, rarely worn. And my mom is a very frugal person. She's not much of a shopper. She has one small cupboard. And even in that one small cupboard, there were so many pieces. So that was really like, to put it as a bit of a cliche, it was genuinely an aha moment for me. It was such a tactile experience. As soon as I touched it, I realized that my mom also had a deep emotional connection with this fabric, having preserved it this way for years. But she couldn't integrate it into her daily wardrobe, for various reasons. So just like this, there are millions of such saris tucked away in wardrobes across the country, being worn less and less. Sometimes brand new saris lie unused for decades or are worn only once or twice. And this treasure trove of fabric would not be allowed to decompose unseen, unused, and as even more cloth was being created to sort of satisfy demand. So I really knew this was it, like in using the upcycled sari, I found something that not only had a charming sense of newness and nostalgia, but also the smallest carbon footprint and its ethical credentials completely intact, and this was in 2011, 2012, end of 2011, I remember the winter. And I was so excited to have, having found this opportunity to create a zero waste closed loop supply chain, literally from source of fabric to the end user. And I was very excited to kind of take it up and change the way we produce. And while we already have a long history of jugaad in India, the culture of upcycling saris into kanthas or kurtas, as you mentioned, Krishna, I really wanted to take it up a notch and make it a very serious choice. I wanted to get people to see upcycling as a serious option and really uplift that piece of cloth lying around in the cupboard.
That's amazing. So Meghna, moving on. So tell me, so like you said, you started off customizing clothes for yourself. And you realized this was your calling. You wanted to do something about it. So how did this begin? Did you have people come to you saying, hey, I like what you did with your sari. Can you do this for me? Or did you just start out saying, this is what I like doing. Let me just make a line of clothes and see how it goes?
So I made my first collection in 2012, and it was completely upcycled. Even some of the zips and buttons were harvested from older garments.
Right.
So it was really 100% upcycled collection in 2012. Krishna, I'm not even sure I knew the word upcycle at that point. I think I learned that word later. I realized I didn't know the words closed loop or circular design or zero waste.
Right.
We only later realized that that's what we had been doing all along, which was really cool. But yeah, I made this small collection and I put it up on Facebook, and it was like from the living room of our, tiny little flat. And I thought maybe some friends and family will come, but like literal strangers started walking in because it was 3 days and word had spread. And there were strangers in my living room. Every piece sold. And it just kept rolling like that. But what happened as well is that a lot of people would not consider wearing something made out of someone else's sari. So inevitably, I would just get request after request. Every exhibition I did, or every person who came in to my little flat, which gradually became like a one-room studio, I moved out. They would ask me, like, can you just make this for me in my sari?
Right.
You know, initially I was very like, I had a very clear idea of my designs, my patterns. I was really, and still continue to educate myself about, you know, the best tailoring, finishing, really directional pattern cutting. I love geometry. So for me, I had a very strong idea, and I was like, I'm not going to make anything that anyone else makes. I'm not going to make typical, what I considered, you know, what you could get anywhere else. But gradually, so many people just kept asking me, can you just make this for me in my mom's sari? And I realized I was missing a trick here, and I should be responding to this. So that's when my Send Us Your Sari campaign was born. So now we do both Pret and custom. So the Pret collection is, I'm a collector of vintage fabric. I have a massive library of thousands of pieces. I mean, if we were on a phone, I would give you a tour of my studio. There are thousands of saris here, which I've been collecting for years, you know, anything from heirloom to literal rags. And I make my Pret collection out of that. And my custom collection happens with women bringing in their own saris, where it's a long and slow process with the customer negotiating the sort of the frailties of the garment, the design, etc., etc. And so, yeah, we have both Pret and custom, which are both very strong lines and give us completely different things, and the way of production is completely different for these two.
Right. So actually, I want to direct this question back to Stefano. What gave you the idea to upcycle? I get that you wanted to give these women an opportunity and a new way of life and a better life, but what sort of actually directed you in this? I mean, I understand that it's sustainable, but what sort of led you to using pre-used or readily available fabric in the market?
You know, once again, you have to start from the fact that the reason why the brand started was to create inclusion and social impact. So I was looking for a business idea that could create impact and be financially sustainable at the same time. And when you work with, like in our case, with artisans that come at the beginning substantially unskilled, and then over time you train them, you train over the job, and at the end you bring them to a level that they can be market ready, you really start with a big handicap. So your efficiency is really below par, especially if you also want to really respect ethical working condition, and you also pay everybody above minimum wage. And so the entire idea was, how can we offset basically this competitive disadvantage? And if you start working with virgin material, basically you don't have economy of scale, you are small by definition at the beginning, you don't have the best skills, how can you really make it? So the idea of working with upcycle material was coming from this idea of basically having a lot of time at disposal, and seeing the opportunity of scouting in this post-consumer pre-use material, and offset part of the competitive disadvantage. So that is how it started. And over time, as Meghna was saying, the importance of sustainability, circularity more from an environmental point of view grew in importance and became more and more central in our agenda as well. But so it was quite a rational process for us. because basically we had to be able to justify a premium in order to sustain the business. And so we had to really have an advantage in terms of sourcing of the material. At least that was the idea at the beginning. And we had to be able to justify a premium by differentiating the design. In fact, we try as much as we can to really follow contemporary design that can make our product affordable and still at the same time very desirable.
So what would you say? Actually, this is directed towards both of you all, because I'm sure you all have a lot of inputs on this one. What would you say would be your limitations? I mean, I'm sure initially when you all started off, at least, it may have been quite a challenge in terms of the resources that were available to you, as well as what you could do with design, or with upcycled material. So what exactly were your challenges, or are your challenges rather?
Stefano, you can go first if you like, if you were finishing what you were saying already.
So, to work in sustainability, first of all, is it's complex. It's much, much more complex than to work in a linear way, working with virgin material. Just for you to get an idea, we spend more time in selecting the material and checking the quality of the material than in the making of the products, because every piece is different. Every piece comes with an history. That means that for us, for example, the simple idea of creating layers and cutting in bulk does not exist. I mean, we place the sari, we check the sari, we place the sari, and then basically you play with the paper pattern around the defects, because you have to use as much as possible from the fabric you have. So there are many constraints that comes from upcycling as a concept. And there are a lot of constraints that comes from the fact that we, both Was A Sari and Lata Sari, we work with saris. When you work with saris, there are certain dimensions that are given. Right. For instance, to work with a width of 110, 150 centimeters is a major limitation. Also, because saris, they come with a border, so the actual part that you have that you can utilize is even less than that. So it becomes an art, because you really need to play around the obstacles, and you really need to turn the obstacles into sometimes even into an opportunity, and basically make some changes so that you can utilize a bigger part of the original fabric.
But I think that's what makes it so special, right? Because then that piece, is made with love and so much attention to detail as well.
And that is what the consumers, the buyers, need to understand in order to appreciate the effort. One of the major criticisms when it comes to sustainable fashion is that sustainable fashion is expensive. Right. Which it's clearly something that at a certain point becomes an issue for the sustainable fashion movement. But important is to acknowledge that there is so much extra complexity when you want to be sustainable, when you want to apply circularity.
Right. Yes. You really do need to work with, each piece's strengths and frailties. Similar to what Stefano was saying, each piece has to be considered separately. We have inconsistency in color, texture, drape, width of border, print, width of pallu. Everything is different per piece. You cannot layer cut like in normal, in an industrial scenario. Each one has to be worked around. There's stain removal, there's repairs, there's endless quality checks. It is actually, I'm sure Stefano would agree, it is actually cheaper and easier to make stuff from just new material which is what many clients and customers may not understand, because we think something old is either, you know, it's very cost effective, but there's a lot of effort. And what I love about the process though, is that instead of spending that money, time and effort on creating new material, we are spending it on creating human labor. You know, that is where it's going. That is, and a great example of this is what I was talking to you earlier, Krishna, where I did a project where which we do every year, where we reuse saris from puja pandals on the street. Now that takes one pandal can give us thousands of saris, and that itself, imagine the process of washing it, preparing it, layering it to create a sort of a thicker fabric. It is endless. You know, the other thing is we work with every type of sari at Lata Sita, from soft, faded, almost raggedy cotton to the most heirloom tancho ya Banarasi that is worth lakhs. So a big part of the design is to choose the right material for the right silhouette. So what you can do with a stiff silk will differ to what you can do with a synthetic or a crepe or a thinner silk or a cotton, or, you know, something in brocade. So that's another big challenge. Another challenge for us as well is creating products that are completely upcycled, barring thread and fixtures. You know, zips and buttons we allow ourselves, but everything else. And also, you know, training people to work with the vintage textile. It was and continues to be a challenge, because people are used to working very differently, and this is slow fashion. It is, you have to have that love and that conscientiousness. Even when you're stitching, it's very different to, say, a normal production scenario, you know. And waste management continues to always be a challenge, because we are a completely zero waste studio. So not only like we are waste positive, not only are we using waste, but we have zero waste patterns, and we are not producing any waste. So at any given point, there are bags, and I mean, there are hundreds of kilos of scraps that we are also trying to, you know, use it up or donate in the best way possible. So I think Stefano and I could probably have an entire discussion just about the challenges, but the results are well worth it, you know. Yeah.
So tell me, I'm sure you all have a favorite anecdote of upcycling a sari. Is there something that comes to mind?
Lots. Yeah. Should I?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there are so many stories, you know, because I'm working with a lot of individuals for the custom project. Even when sourcing saris, there are plenty of stories. But let's see, like one of the memorable stories that comes to mind, actually, this is in the early days when I had first started Lata Sita, is I often have women coming to me with their mum saris, right? And that leads to all kinds of stories. This is a lady who had come to me with a gorgeous purple silk, and she wanted to make something, and her mum's death anniversary was coming up. She said, I may as well, I thought I'd make something with her sari and wear it that day. And the first step is, you know, I was just inspecting the sari. This is how we work with a customer. We see their body type, we understand their lifestyle, their requirements, and then of course the all important saris need to be inspected. So they were all really beautiful, except all of them had these big blotches, these stains running down the front where the pleats would be. And I asked her, what is it? You know, just out of curiosity, I knew I'd probably have to get down to, you know, trying to remove these stains. And she said actually her mother had dementia in her later years, but was a very impeccably turned out lady. That while she had a dementia, every day she would, you know, she would still be wearing her pearls and her really nice blouse and her sari. And she loved eating chocobar ice cream. And you know, she would have it every evening, but her hands would really shake and the chocobar would just drip down the sari, and they never stopped her, of course. You know, she was enjoying her ice cream. So those were those stains there. So that really got into my mind, you know, because when this lady left, I then, while cutting the sari, I couldn't bring myself to remove those stains. And the usual aesthetics kind of inversed, because those stains took on a whole emotional, like a meaning, you know. So whatever garment I made for her, I made an underskirt that incorporated those stains. So she could just lift it, just a private thing, but it's always there.
Right.
So, you know, things like that, those are the amazing stories that come out of actually working with the fabric that has this, that is steeped in history and emotion, that the usual aesthetics could get completely reversed. You know, I had someone else write to me not too long ago. So I work with a lot of wedding saris as well. You know, my mom's wedding sari, or can you upcycle my wedding sari? I have not worn it for X number of years. This girl wrote to me saying, can you work with my divorce sari? And she called it a divorce sari, you know. And I was like, this is fabulous. And she said that, you know, I had a really unhappy marriage. It was just 1 year. I am so ready to move on. I want to transform my life, and I want you to cut up all my saris and transform them. She sent me the whole lot. So I thought I should do a divorce sari series, you know. So wonderful ideas and inspiration comes out of customers. Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, a usual person would think of a haircut. I'd never think of cutting up a sari.
Yeah, great satisfaction and, you know,
yeah.
transforming it into something cool. So there are endless anecdotes like that, you know, for sure.
What about you, Stefano? I'm sure, I mean, you touched so many lives and you must have met so many people through your journey.
Yeah, a lot of memories, a lot of anecdotes. I was thinking now, and I remember a few years ago, it was really the beginning of the project. So one day I received a call from the mother of a friend, and she invited me home in South Mumbai. And when I arrived, she showed me basically this stock of amazing saris. And she said, Stefano, I think that you're working on a brilliant idea. I know that I haven't used these saris for so long, and I'm not going to use them. So I thought that it's a great idea to donate the saris to you. At that time, we were making just very simple accessories. So we went through the saris together. And of course, there were stories behind each of those saris. And at the end, I told her, you know what? It would be an injustice to take any of these masterpieces and turn them into the accessories that we make today. So I would feel bad. I have to turn down your offer. I will help you to find a better way. I think that you should basically put a frame around some of these pieces and put on the wall, but no. And so I didn't accept it. I didn't accept those vintage saris. And a few years later, in January 2019, we have been selected for the Circular Design Challenge at the Lakme Fashion Week. And so it was a show with a jury, and at the end we won the competition that year. And after the show, I was there, and there were questions. And at a certain point, one of the members of the jury asked me, I said, yes, Stefano, all interesting, but do you really think that by upcycling a sari, you are giving justice? Do you really think that that's what every sari at a certain point should? And so in that precise moment, this encounter with this lady that wanted to give us saris, and I told him, I said, look, we are in upcycling. We are not in downcycling. So every time we have to ask ourselves if we can really add value and create value by transforming. There are many situations where basically we believe that a sari should remain a sari. And there is no better way of preserving the history, the memories, and whatever is attached to that. And now that I heard the last story from Meghna, I think that your divorce sari is a fantastic idea. if you launch a capsule collection for that, you will be very busy because as you all know, divorces are growing. So yeah, this is an anecdote. This is one of the memory. I have also to say that many years ago, at the beginning of the project, I used to personally go to the second-hand market, sometimes even night markets, to select the saris. And what I remember about those visits is that after I had seen thousands, tens of thousands of saris, there was still always that moment that you are checking sari, and really to select 100, probably we need to check 500 pieces because we are very very specific in terms of material, color, prints. And throughout the day, at a certain point, you open a sari and you see something that you had never seen before. It's a print, it's a design, there is something which is unique. And I remember the feeling every time of saying, wow, there are certain patterns that come back, and so you see them again and again, but then suddenly there is something which is absolutely new, unprecedented, original. And I remember that was giving me every time such a joy, also an injection of energy, because it's really one of a kind. Every time each piece is going to be different from the others, and every time also you can encounter saris which are completely new, at least they were completely new to me.
So actually taking off from the point that you just mentioned, that every piece is completely different. My previous question actually about limitations, isn't that a limitation that you'll face as well? Although, I mean, having a piece that's one of a kind for a consumer could be a good thing, but in terms of your business model, is that a limitation? So do you have people coming to you saying, no, I want exactly what I saw on your website, and you may not be able to give them the same because obviously you're working with limited resources and material that's available to you. So is that a challenge for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely for me, that happens all the time, where people, they want that piece, but it is just a one-off. And
Right.
there are certain combinations, like as Stefano will also probably agree with, certain saris and prints can repeat themselves. They'll be a little
Right.
similar or same colors, or there are certain combinations like white and gold, or that do come back round, but it may not ever be exactly the same. Like something like this, black and white, you might find it. But for instance, this, a beautiful black sari that's upcycled is very, very rare. So the black pieces are always prized, somehow you never really get that too much. Another limitation is, for me at least, I can't choose really the fabric that comes to me too much, because I'm buying personal collections of people as well. It is like a beautiful self-curated space. It's fascinating. But yes, it's the opposite of it's like a reverse of a normal design process, in the sense another designer might be able to just decide that this is the color story I want, this is the material I want to make this specific blue dress. But we don't, at least I don't have that luxury. The material speaks to me. I have to make the best of the material available to me. And, another challenge is also that we are completely zero waste. So it is about harvesting and breaking down each and every part of the sari and putting it to use. So having zero waste pattern cutting and very thoughtful marker planning, which is basically how placing the pattern pieces, etc., in a way that, whatever is left can then be transformed into another piece or a garment, a smaller one. And then the ultimate little scraps can again go into something. So it's at each stage we have to apply different designs and pattern cutting to kind of go in with the circular and zero waste principles.
Right. Right.
I can mention another limitations of working with one of a kind. nowadays we all know that to sell online is a growing trend, and if you want to have a sound business is a sort of imperative. Well, when you work with one-of-a-kind pieces, you don't have depth in what you're selling, and to create a new reference online is a major cost. You need to take photos, you need to create the reference. So for us, for instance, to really scale and be successful online is challenging. You really need to approach e-commerce in a different way. You need very much to sell a story. It has to be an immersive experience, because otherwise, really, you have a big limitation. So, and it's just one of the many aspects that you have to deal with when you work with one of a kind.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Stefano. This is one of the biggest challenges, and we are a pretty small independent business. So the sheer cost of photography for each and every piece, the metadata involved. It's not even that you can do something and give like 10 color options, because that doesn't work. Stefano will know exactly what I mean, because the finished piece will have, again, the border is different, the pallu is different, might have different parts to it. So showing one part of it may not be representative of the whole. And our pieces are extremely tailored, they're layered, they are so, they're impeccably finished. There's a lot of work that goes into it already. So that's already quite cost heavy. And then to translate that online, if you think of another business or another clothing business, you can do sort of one photo shoot per season with your one time, your model, your editing, your color correction, whatever, you put it up, and then you can sell a few hundred or a few thousand, or in other cases of fast fashion, a few million pieces. But we don't have that. It really is that one piece, or if it's a smaller piece, perhaps you can get two pieces out of a sari that's in good condition. But for the most part, it is one of a kind, and there are endless challenges.
Actually, talking of challenges, although women of all ages in India, almost all ages at least, wear a sari, were women actually open to the idea of wearing something that was used or pre-loved, or because I would imagine that people have that notion in India where they're not very open to vintage clothing worn by someone else, So was that ever a challenge for you?
Well, for me, yes, a lot actually. Like when I first started in 2012, I don't think there were any other brands out there doing what we did. And it was a very new idea for a lot of people. And I got advice from, quite established designers as well, saying that we love your designs, but please change your raw material. Like something in me I love this material. I'm so glad I stuck to it. But there were, people would get very excited. And then when they knew it was an upcycled sari, they might be kind of turned off by it. I've actually had store owners who want to keep my stuff, just say, we are not going to mention that it's an old sari. Because our clothes don't look like, whatever the notions of old are, our clothes can, stand up in any in any store or any situation. They're not meant to look old. They're meant to be as good a choice as any other fast fashion brand. That's what we're trying to do. Both Stefano and I, we are trying to make affordable quality clothing, but very, very sustainably. But yes, and in India especially, there is a notion of there's superstition attached to wearing old, or rather there is aspiration attached to something new. In Calcutta as well, we have Durga Puja every year, or for Eid. It's very traditional that people buy new clothes. It means something to be able to buy something new. Having said that, things have changed to the point, like this is 2012, and now in 2021 we have a massive amount of greenwashing happening as well, where I've seen I've seen brands calling something upcycled, which is more or less a new garment with one patch of a pocket. So So that's the, you know, there's a lot of greenwashing going on. So from it being sort of looked down upon to it being aspirational within a small niche, it's quite interesting to see how perceptions change about, you know, what we've been doing.
You know, Krishna, we do 95% of our sales abroad. Okay, and that is due to the fact that the idea of upcycling is still a relatively new concept in India, and Meghna has explained it very well. It's a mix of superstition from one side, stigma on second-hand pre-use. India is a very aspirational society, and so the market will take time. I think that post-pandemic there has been a major acceleration everywhere, including India, that the number of conscious consumers has drastically increased. But for instance, I look into upcycling in other regions, and very interesting, I found that, for instance, in China, it's upcycling is banned for similar reasons, because there is really a stigma on using someone else's material.
Right.
And even more than the Indian society is a super aspirational society. So it's still in the phase where you want to put a brand rather than going out and say, you know what, I am a zero impact consumer.
Right.
Is not there. But it's a cycle. The Western markets where we sell mostly our products, Europe is our main market. And then we sell in other, probably last year we sold in like 20 different countries. The idea of buying sustainable products and of buying pre-use products is becoming really mainstream. So it will require some time, but it is going to come.
Yeah, I'm so glad, Stefano, that you brought up China. I had a client once from China who told me that she said, you know, you can't do this in China, because she said, to the point where even baby clothes, like you don't even pass on baby clothes, which is a very common thing in other countries. You know, we pass it on, it's used, because it's believed that the temper of the baby might pass on. So if you have a very ill-tempered baby, or a baby that cries a lot, and you pass their clothes on, there's a danger that the other baby will get the trait. So that's how deep it goes, you know, and it's very hard to challenge those, you know, those inherent beliefs. But at the same time, I have to say, from a sustainability point, I mean, I just realized this now, that from a sustainability point of view, I mean, I think what I noted, at least about India, was the average woman who loved fast fashion. Malls have come up in India, H&M, Zara, we have seen them all in the last few years. And the same woman who loves fast fashion is storing saris for years, whilst using and throwing other clothes, the same person. So that points to a very strong emotional connection with the saris. So that is what I wanted to use and work on, because, you know, consumer behavior is probably some of the hardest behavior to change in the world. And we're trying here, but it is a hard behavior to change. So using that emotional connection was my best bet at kind of challenging this behavior. But at the same time, that can also work against you, because feelings can also be so deep rooted that you know, it leads to these kind of prejudices about old versus new.
I don't know, Meghna, in your case, but for instance, a very interesting market is represented by the Indian diaspora. Indian diaspora is very interesting because you have people with clearly strong connection to Indian roots, Indian culture,
yes,
but very much exposed to trends in terms of, again, conscious behaviors and purchasing behaviors. So in that community, for instance, we are quite successful, so it very much depends also to the exposure you have.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you think India would ever truly be, I mean, of course, over the past few years, we've seen a lot of changes in trends and what people wear, what they choose to buy, how much they choose to own as well. But do you think that India would truly ever be a market for upcycle clothing?
Well, as Stefano said, most of their you know, business is from overseas. And what I would say, Stefano, ours is about 50-50, but we are also a much smaller brand, and we have the custom side of it, which means, you know, in Indian audience. But for us as well, you know, we've done, wherever we've done an exhibition abroad, we've exhibited in, you know, like from Taiwan to Stockholm. People are excited. The kind of overwhelming response that we get is amazing. And they call you an artist, and they treat you in a way that I have not felt in India for sure. I think that we can get there. It's an evolving market. I personally feel, you know, like people are still very, very excited about fast fashion here. There's a long road ahead. And what we are doing is, both Stefano and I, it's a niche, very much of a niche in India, and a growing niche, no doubt. But it does take hard work, you know. I think the immediate future is probably overseas, but gradually, because we have such a huge population, that a niche in India is still a sizable amount, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
I don't know what Stefano's thoughts.
No, I agree. I also think that what you, Meghna, did, so you started from ready to wear and you moved to custom, is the right answer, because, you know, sustainability now is a concept. You were mentioning greenwashing. Now everybody is trying to position their brands in sustainability. Sustainability is something that is so radicated in the Indian culture. I mean, it's always been about really reusing, and basically extracting any kind of value that is left in any material. So the idea of upcycling, that was not called in any trendy, fashionable way, has always been there. The point is, if there is a stigma about using someone else's material, then okay, let's not use all the resources in order to try to change that. Let's move in a direction where basically we work with what the consumer already have. So you have a stock of saris that really are the history of your family. Instead of letting them die in your cupboard, give a new life. And what's more really beautiful than to imagine a grandchild wearing a dress that is made with the wedding sari of the grandmother.
Absolutely, that's very powerful.
So I believe that instead of pretending that tomorrow India is going to be ready as a mass market, to go back to the idea of upcycling, reusing, and using someone else's material. There is a huge opportunity in addressing the need of probably what I would define a middle upper Indian class, and really reinventing what is already available in their wardrobes.
Yes, and really the custom was a way to address this kind of prejudice or preconceived notions, etc. Because I really love to use Lata Sita as a sort of a gentle way to influence people, to, you know, turn them on to this, but they will be more happier and easily led with their own textile rather than buying. So that's exactly how the custom part started, because the breadth was there, and then people would just ask, can I make, I won't wear this as someone else's, and they were ready to buy that piece if they didn't know it was upcycled. But this is a great way to start a conversation and kind of change that behavior and turn people on to this process of high engagement, rather than, one click and you buy something. Like highly engaged in who made it, how was it made, and reimagining the possibilities, and actually understanding through a live example in front of them that you genuinely don't need to buy anything new if you can put in the time and effort to reimagine what you already have. And seeing that process, seeing people get excited from the first time they come to the end product is an amazing feeling, because you do see people, and most of my clients, Krishna, who are coming, you might assume they're interested in sustainability. They're not. They just want to look good. At the end of the day, it's fashion.
Yeah.
Honestly, I could make the most sustainable product in the world, but if it didn't make someone look good, they wouldn't buy it. So people are coming from that perspective. They want to look and feel good, and the sustainability is a bonus. Right. So if you can switch them onto it and use their own emotional, the fabric that they're emotionally connected with, it's so far been a really interesting and beautiful experience. It kind of sits at it's sort of anthropology, memory, history, identity. It's at the intersection of waste management and sustainability, circularity. It sits at the intersection of so many meaningful concepts that if you can, make that work and get through to someone, they will be on board, Right. It'll take some time to change for a larger audience.
Right. So actually, this is just a question I'm throwing in. It can be off the record. But I was actually wondering, have you ever tried to find out where the sari came from? Like the sari that you sourced, for instance, the story of the person who wore it, and wherever you sourced it from. Has there ever been a case of that? Because honestly, as a consumer, I would, if otherwise I wasn't open to upcycling, but if I sort of knew story of the person who wore the sari when they wore it and their life, that is probably something that would entice me. I don't know, I'm just thinking from a consumer's point of view. So has there ever been a case where you've actually tracked down where that sari came from, who wore it, that person's story, of course, except for like a personal client coming in with their own sari, but otherwise like stuff that you've sourced?
So I think Stefano and I might source slightly differently. I have also been to the markets and bought saris in bulk from the market, but that's like one particular kind of a sari. Otherwise, all my saris are sourced from individuals. So I know exactly whose it is. Okay. I know what they did. And it's amazing because I had one of the most memorable collections I bought was from a lady called Roma Mittar, who just passed away. And her daughter Indrani was moving her to Bombay. And before they moved, they had a lifetime's worth. I bought this chair from her as well. They had a lifetime's worth of things to get rid of, including paintings, when she was an artist. And she had this is the beauty of and the joy of selecting and, the privilege of having this access to these personally curated spaces, Krishna, because a wardrobe is a very intimate space. Right. How often do you get a glimpse into someone else's wardrobe? But I do that all the time. That's literally my everyday. And yes, I absolutely know who they came from, what they did, their aspirations, what their thoughts. This is their first sari their husband bought them while they were dating. This is the one they bought with their first paycheck. That is what happens. But if you have to do business on a much larger scale, I can accept that, that is not always what's going to happen. Right. But for the time being, yeah, it's a very clear and transparent line of sourcing. Right.
Yeah, we have a different model. So in our case, we really buy a large quantity of saris, and we don't know the
right.
story. What I find interesting is that now I have sometimes I dream of saris. So when I when I am in India and I'm walking around and I see women wearing saris, first of all, I recognize some patterns, or really I look at saris, oh, that would be an amazing, that could turn in an amazing PJ, or would be.
I do that all the time too.
And,
It's really bad.
And so that is how I link to the owner, to the owners of the saris. But in our case, otherwise, we really buy.
But it's totally true, Stefano. You can't help but look at saris and immediately imagine them as
you
something or the other.
deconstruct them, and you imagine, okay, oh, with that palu, you could do.
And sometimes even socially, if I've met someone and I am quite obviously eyeing someone's sari up and they're like, do not think about cutting this up. They notice I'm doing it and I'm like, oops, better avert my gaze.
Yeah, you have a whole new shopping category, right, of divorce saris.
Can't wait to do that project, to be honest. Yeah.
Cool. It was such a pleasure talking to both of you all today. It was so insightful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Krishna and
Thank
Meghna.
you both. It was really interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.